I am delighted to welcome Tara Sullivan, the Boston Globe, to Crack and the Bat. Crack and the Bat is a little half-hour interviews we do for the Irish American Baseball Society. Basically, the Irish American Baseball Society is members who are baseball fans with a passion for Ireland, who don't have to be Irish. So Tara, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. And so would I be right in saying that under normal circumstances, would you be at the Olympics?
I would, yeah. And I probably, even as abnormal as the circumstances are, I still could have gone this year, but between the protocols and the hurdles to clear, and quite honestly, for me, what felt like the return on investment, just not knowing what it would be like over there, I didn't go. But the Globe, we still have 2 staffers over there. So I've been supporting their coverage from here and writing different things about the Olympics. But I was lucky enough to cover the most recent winter one in Pyeongchang, but ultimately elected just not to travel for this one.
So, and it's nothing to do with the cardboard beds. You didn't feel it. No.
I heard they're very eco-friendly, right? And
of course, leave it to the Irish guy. There's some Irish gymnast who's the first, and what does he have to do?
Jump on the cardboard bed.
I was like, oh, leave it to the Irish guy, you know. But
like
hey, listen, I know that the Irish team got a lot of credit because they were, I think, the only team who bowed to the Japanese when they came in.
Oh,
you know, us Irish people were fierce big on bowing and stuff like that. So good luck to them on that one.
Respectful. Our people are very respectful.
Very
there was a medal yesterday in rowing, I think, right, for Ireland. So that was exciting. I think there were some women's rowers who medaled. So,
wow. Hey, listen, if Ireland's going to win a medal, we're winning a medal for going backwards.
In a canoe.
In a canoe. Very nice. Well, actually, there was a guy who he was a first cousin of my ex-wife's, and he Reinish was his name, and he, you know, there were several years where he was in the whitewater rafting or something.
Oh, wow.
Like that. So
okay.
got very big in that, just for the family, from the family side of things. So listen, we're going to go back a little bit before we go forward, because I was thinking, so mom's from Limerick.
Correct.
Dad's from Milltown Malbay.
Well, my dad is from New York, but his dad was from Milltown Malbay. Okay.
And contrary to what Irish Central said, the last time I checked, Milltown Malbay is in Clare, not in Sligo.
Correct. It's in Clare. Yeah.
I read the story you did with the Irish Central, and I was like, if anybody should get that right, it should have been that.
The Irish Central. Yes. Yes. Milltown Malbay is one of the great music capitals of Ireland. You know.
No, Lisdoonvarna is. Milltown Malbay is the next one over.
The next one over, right. See, I combined them in my head because we would visit all the time, and they were so close to each other. But actually, I don't know that area as well. I have to say, in all my travels to Ireland, we were always much closer to my mother's side of the family, because my mother was the oldest of 8 children and the only one who emigrated to America. Oh. So I have more first cousins and more relations in Ireland than I had in America.
So you know, it's like you have a bazillion cousins, right?
Yeah.
So Christy comes to Ireland with me the first time, and we're at my sister's house, and my nephew was about 10, and of course he's got the same thing. His you know, on our side of the family, it's not that many, but on his dad's side of the family, so he's like 40 cousins. And so he brings one of his cousins in. He says, "Come here." Says, "You see her?" And he points at Christy, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to go with she covers a baseball team.
Right.
She's like, she only has 5 cousins, and he says, "I have 5 cousins called Thomas."
Exactly.
You know.
They are, in Irish culture, anywhere else, I love that phrase, you know, your cousins are your first best friends. Like that's if you grew up in an Irish family and there are enough of us to go around. Yeah, it feels like so many of the siblings have kids at the same time.
Right.
And then you're just with those kids all the time. So, but yes, so my mother would bring us back relatively often to go visit her family, with, you know, her immediate family, and her dad passed away relatively young, unfortunately. So we really made a concerted effort to see Gran, as we called her, my grandmother on my mother's side. And they were right in downtown Limerick, a great spot. If our listeners or you have read Angela's Ashes, it's actually the exact same neighborhood that my mother grew up in, Thomond Gate, right there by the Treaty Stone where it used to be. And in Limerick City. And I even went to college for 6 months at University.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, because I know you didn't go to college for 6 months. You drank for 6 months.
Says who? They can do both. I can multitask.
Anybody ever tells me, "Oh, my son's going to study in Ireland for 6 months," I'm like, "He ain't going to do much studying, but he is going to learn how to drink." With the, it's funny actually. I got to know Malachi McCoy pretty well when I had because I'll never forget when I made that statement that I decided to ban Danny Boy. I looked up and there's like 6 film crews, news crews at Foley's, and standing in them is like Malachi McCourt, who's like basically like, he's like the upper echelon of the Illuminati, and I'm like, this guy's gonna, and he comes over, he shakes my hand, he says, "Thank God somebody had the balls to ban that fucking song." And I was like, "Ooh." I didn't have the heart to tell. Here's the thing. My issue with Angela's Ashes was, I thought it was a great book. I mean, I know the people in Limerick were very upset that it said, "Oh, things are never that bad." But my issue was that he wrote it knowing he was going to write the second one, and didn't finish it right. I mean, you knew there was going to be a second one, so I boycotted Tiz.
Interesting. I find it hard to argue with the reality of a memoir. Like, I understand people in Limerick were affronted or saying it wasn't that, but to me, when somebody writes their experience, like, who am I to tell them that wasn't their experience? So I just, I thought Angela's Ashes, the first one I loved, the subsequent one I did not love, because I think it lost the sense of kind of the ability to look in the face of tragedy and be so Irish about it, which is find, still keep your wit and your humor and kind of face it with a stiff upper, whatever, a stiff chin or whatever, strong chin, stiff upper lip. I thought in the first one in Angela's Ashes, I just thought he did a great job of kind of keeping that Irish personality. Whereas I don't know what you thought when they tried to make a movie of it. I thought that was one of the most depressing hours I ever spent trying to watch a movie. And that to me was so not Irish, like the book.
I think a better one was Brooklyn. Very, very.
Absolutely. I agree. And I was on a trip visiting my sister years ago, and there's a lovely little bookshop my sister lives in Tullamore, which is in Offaly, and there's a bookstore just right downtown, and that I would always make it a practice when I'd visit to go to this small bookstore and just find something new, an Irish author, anything, because I love to read. I'm on vacation, I'll sit with my books, and I found that Brooklyn before I knew anything about Colm Tóibín or the offer, long before there was a movie, and couldn't put it down. So I agree with you on that one. That one just resonated. The immigrant experience was so profoundly well done, I thought, in that book. And the movie, it's still hard. I'd probably weep at that moment when she's standing on the bow of the QE, the Queen Elizabeth, emigrating. And for me, thinking my mother had done that very same thing, and even though I couldn't see it then, and the immigrant.
The thing about it is that I said that to someone. It may have actually been Christian who went to the movie. I said, because I took my father to see it, and basically, anybody who has left and has left family members there, has known what it's like, when you get that call that someone has died and you can't get home to say. I mean, I've had to do it with, my father's had to do it with 2 of his brothers, where basically, and you don't, one of them was, he's sick, you better come home. And before we get to the airport, he's gone, and then you have the whole not getting to see it. But okay, we that's enough depressing Irish stuff for a second. So
but we're great at the depressing stuff.
Oh, well, listen, we can turn it into an art form, to be honest with you. We can spend the next half hour a coning and a coning all, but yes, that's not why we're here. So listen to me. I was looking at this. So mom and dad met in the Bronx, lived in Inwood, I think.
We lived in the Bronx, actually. No, and then I don't think we ever actually lived in Inwood. There may have been an apartment there at one point, but my dad's family just slowly moved. They started in Morningside Heights, which is kind of, the upper reaches of Manhattan, and then they were up on Fordham Road for a while in the Bronx, and eventually my grandmother lived out her final years in Riverdale, up by Van Cortlandt Park, Manhattan College, that area. And my mom, when she first came to the United States, wasn't intending to stay, but was a nurse, had trained in England, went from Ireland to England, came to the United States, was working at a Columbia Presbyterian, and then lived in Brooklyn for a while, and then in Manhattan with some, nursing friends, other fellow Irish immigrant nurses. And they met, I think it was at a party in Manhattan. And then we lived in the Bronx originally.
Where about
right
in the
off the Grand
Bronx?
Concourse. We lived in the until I was about 4 years old. My dad's a Cardinal Hayes grad, so he's kind of a New Yorker through and through, even though he moved us to New Jersey. I feel more like a New Jerseyan through and through because I started school in New Jersey. My siblings, I have 3 siblings who are older, all started school in New York and finished in New Jersey, so they have a little bit of both. But I couldn't hide New Jersey anyway. Once I opened my mouth, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, well, we're not going to,
judge all you want. It's okay.
Oh, listen, I'm the Irish guy. I'm the Irish guy living in Florida. So how can I really judge anything at this stage? So, okay, so 3 siblings. Correct. I know, so brother was a giant father. Your dad had giant season tickets.
He did, yeah.
You were a huge Yankee fan. I'm not going to say if you were. And you had a huge collection of baseball cards. Do you still have the baseball cards?
I actually do. It's funny. So my son Kevin is 30, got married this year. Yay.
Congratulations. Yes, we're going to come to that in a little bit.
Very much. So when Kevin was first born, I was young. And anyway, I decided one of my projects would be to go through all the baseball cards because my mother used to call it my therapy. I really did, like, any allowance, any extra money, I bought baseball cards. And my aim at the time when I was a kid was mostly to collect the full Yankee team. That was my obsession because at the time, nobody was selling box sets or full sets. You just bought the wax packs and whatever, so I was waiting to get my 10 Dave Righetti cards or whatever, because he was my favorite, whoever, Ron Guidry, all my favorites from those years. And I would save old shoe boxes and I would alphabetize and collate them by year, by team. And I would make sure to use a double. Like I would have them lined up in the shoebox and I would stick my index cards would be a double. So that I knew, and I would keep the teams in alphabetical order. But like when you're collecting baseball cards, there's a million of them that are worth like less than a penny. It's the stars that end up being worth something. So when my son was first born, I went through all of them and I bought all the pages and I took out all the cards that might've been worth something. Like I had, I think, triples of Ricky Henderson's rookie card, things like that just came through my collecting. Dale Murphy, who would go on to become a back-to-back MVP, was on one of those like future stars cards. And that was worth, and the Tom Seavers, whatever I had left. So I have and then I would even save, like, Burger King in those days used to do a limited set of Yankee cards. And I loved those because they would be all the stars of all the Burger King cards. Anyway, Thurman Munson, the people that meant things to me. So I actually have an album. I couldn't tell you if it has anything in there that's worth money. And then I have
you didn't do it for money. That's the thing.
And I just like knowing they're there. And I have a crate still filled with all the extra baseball cards. The ones, if I knew the old players, I'd be like, go find yourself in there, because there's a million of them in there. I had something called a talking baseball card with the matching little machine that was battery operated. It was like a mini CD thing, and you would put it inside there. And so I still have them all. They just have a little place in my heart because I was a huge baseball fan.
And again, I loved your quote when, because obviously, you moved up, into the, we won't say you went from the penthouse to the outhouse, but you moved up into enemy territory. But I liked your quote where you said that you don't cover sports, you cover people. And I can understand that because, I won't say I grew up as a Yankee fan, but my first experience and my first exposure was the Yankees. As I said, someone, I got a Ricky Henderson, sorry, not Ricky Henderson. I had someone brought, like, the way you would come home from the States, where we had people would come home, friends, my parents would come home. My parents they lived in when they were married at St. Nicholas Talentine.
Oh, yeah. I danced there many times, but that's
so they'd come home, and one of them came home one year and gave me a Reggie Jackson t-shirt. I thought it was one of the Jackson 5. What did I know? He's American, he's black. Yeah, I knew it. But I had a Don Mattingly glove that couldn't even pronounce Mattingly, but now you mentioned, so my first favorite Yankee when I came here first was Mike Stanley.
Oh, okay.
And I was lucky enough to get to meet Mike Stanley, and that was pretty cool. So now so you grew up, you just said, Righetti and that,
so my brother, one of my brothers is 3 years older than I. So it's my sister's the oldest, and then 2 boys, and then me. My sister and the brother closest to me don't know the difference between football and baseball, no interest in sports, whatever. My other brother and myself were complete sports fanatics growing up. So we kind of tended to align ourselves that way. My dad was not a huge baseball fan. And when he was actually a Giants fan in New York. And
Right.
so when they left for California, that's how he ended up adopting the Giants in football. That's how he sort of became a Giants football family. But so my brother, who's 4 years older, being the big Yankee fan, and I modeled myself on him largely. So that's how I started being a Yankee fan. I was in like second, third grade. The Yankees were still very good at that time. You're looking at the 77, 78 World Series, and Chris Chambliss was actually my first favorite Yankee. He hit a big home run against the Royals. And so I actually had that baseball card that showed that one. And actually Chambliss I used to carry his baseball card to school every day. It was all wrinkled and everything when I was in grammar school, because I liked him so much. But so that's how I kind of came around to the Yankees, was just following in my brother's footsteps. And so I kind of went through like the Greg Nettles, Willie Randolph, Ron Guidry. And then in 1981, as I was ending middle school in America, Righetti got promoted from AAA, and he was sort of the next coming. He won the Rookie of the Year. He was outstanding. And in my teenage girl fandom, in my opinion, was the best looking person I'd ever seen. So I had a crush, and I had an admiration, and I had the whole thing. And I could tell embarrassing stories from here till the end of my career about standing in line to get his autograph, and putting tape on my cheek when I got a little kiss on the cheek, and all the good stuff. But it made for a lot of fun. When I graduated high school, I kid you not, I think everybody who signed my yearbook wrote something about the Yankees or about Dave Righetti, because I think everybody knew that part of me, that I just was a big fan. And to close the story, many, many years later, when the Yankees and the Mets played in the Subway Series that year, the Mets had to advance past the San Francisco Giants, for whom Righetti was working at the time.
Pitching coach.
At their pitching coach. Yeah. And I ended up, interviewing him more than once and kind of getting to know him a little bit. And he was fabulous. He couldn't have been nicer. And so it was one of those lucky moments for me where the player you grew up sort of liking the most turned out to be a pretty cool guy.
You're lucky, because he has a reputation of being pretty miserable when it comes to the press.
Righetti?
Yeah.
I mean, he just didn't do a ton of press. I think back in his playing days, it wasn't bad. I remember.
Oh, no. I mean, in his Giants days, because some of the guys that I knew that used to be in PR with the Giants, they had, they were just like, he was a tough guy to deal with, because what it was, he didn't suffer bullshit, so he didn't,
right.
And the thing was, like, it was basically like, his no-hitter was what, Father's Day, or was it July?
No, July 4th.
Yeah, and basically every, they were having like the 25th anniversary or something like that, and they wanted the New York media wanted to have what we now call a Zoom call with him, and,
right?
It's just like miserable. So
Funny,
I was just curious, because
I even landed one of those interviews. I remember when Yankee Stadium was closing, and I was working for the Bergen Record in New Jersey then, and we were doing a series of like the most memorable moments at Yankee Stadium, and they wanted one on, and I of course raised my hand to do that story, but I guess the anniversary stories hadn't really started rolling in, so he wasn't as inundated or something. Yeah. I can only speak for my own experience was pretty good, so I'll give him a pass. But then I'm the biggest Righetti apologist.
Then you're cute, you're bubbly, and you're Tara Sullivan, so that helps too. Actually, there's a story. It's when you mentioned about the anniversary of closing Yankee Stadium. I won't give the graphic details because it is a little rude, and
okay.
We are on Facebook. But when they were celebrating the 50th anniversary of Yankee Stadium, Bob Fischel, who was the PR director, sent out basically a fax to all of the top players and said, "Hey, can you fill this out and send it back? We're doing something for the Yankee magazine." And it was, what's your favorite memory of Yankee Stadium? And Mickey Mantle sent one back that was X-rated and involved something that happened under the bleachers, but not, So I had a copy of this, and I would show it to certain people, and I said, "Well, wait till you see this." And several people said, "Oh, that never happened. That never happened."
That must be fake.
Well, here's the thing. So Marty Appel comes in, Yankee historian, and I said, "Marty," "someone gave me this." I said, "Is it a fake?" And he said, "Nope." And he went. He left, and he came back maybe about an hour later, and he had a note that he had notarized saying that not only was it fake, but he was the guy who took it off the fax machine when it came back into the Yankee office.
So he could vouch 100% for it. Yeah.
That's God
Several
knows.
moments at Yankee Stadium. Something tells me there might have been an alcohol flavored drink involved in.
No. Well, you see, here's the thing. We talked about this before. Mickey wasn't a big drinker. Mickey couldn't drink. He was a messy drinker. My father worked in Touch Shores and used to take care of him. And he said, no, he said he just was a sloppy drunk, but he had no tolerance for alcohol. The guy who could drink was Whitey Ford.
Oh, Whitey Ford. I thought you were
Lord rest him. And the funny thing is, I took a lot of grief from people who said, I can't believe you have the Irish American Baseball Hall of Fame and you haven't inducted Whitey Ford. He's not Irish. He's Scandinavian. And he keep telling me that. But it's funny, every time I met him, he always remembered my name. And the only reason why he remembered my name was, I guess his daughter was married to a guy called Clancy. So his grandkids were Clancy. So we remember that.
There you go.
So you emigrated to Jersey. And yes. It's funny, I'm surprised. I did read where you contradicted Bruce Springsteen, and I'm surprised that they didn't send you back. Maybe that's why you got sent to Boston, because it was a great quote where you said about don't let your glory days be your glory days. What is it? One finish line does not a destination make. And I was like, I was very profound.
Well, I think we're always moving forward, but I can't even. I work for the Boston Globe. I actually live back in New Jersey, and I work remotely again. And that happened prior to the pandemic. We lived up there for 2 years almost.
Yeah, I remember you moving.
Yeah, we did move. Yeah, we moved for 2 years. But anyway, it's just a lot of family stuff. My daughter is in high school still and really miss being down with the friends that she'd gone to school with. And my dad, knock wood, beautiful and great health, but still with us. And I hated him living down in New Jersey by himself. My siblings are spread out all over the world. So we moved back, and I'm very grateful to the Globe because I travel to all my destinations from here. And of course, once the pandemic hit, we all started working remotely. I was a little bit ahead of the curve there, but my dad was able to spend the whole pandemic, or he still does, but we're obviously with our vaccinations.
Well, that's pretty cool. So where in the great state of New Jersey are you?
I live in the northwest corner in a town called Newton, which is in Sussex County, which is where we had initially built a house up here the first time around after I got married. And so we ended up coming back to the same town, different house, but same town. And my daughter's now halfway through high school. So we'll see. Who knows? You never know, like where we could end up after she finishes high school and heads off to college. But for now, I'm grateful to be able to do it this way.
That's pretty cool.
And my one brother lives in Massachusetts, so I always have a place to stay up there.
That's pretty cool. Okay. Now we got to talk about the thing that I've been dying to talk to you about, Irish dancing.
Okay.
So your mom enrolled you, and actually it's kind of funny because the first time I looked at it, it says, Patsy Early McLaughlin.
Yeah.
And I had to read several articles before you. So Patsy is a lady.
Correct. Yes, she's Patricia. Which
brings me back to when I started dating Christy first, and I told I started telling my sisters I'm dating somebody. I said her name's Christy, and on more than because Christy in Ireland is normally it's short for Christopher.
Sure. Yeah.
I had two of my siblings ask me, "Is Christy a girl?" So I was like, oh, wow. Talk about casting aspersions. Really? I'm like, I'm married, 2 kids. You think I'm late in life, I'm going to the other side. So mom, I have the question. Mom enrolled you. Were all 4 of you enrolled, or was it just? Sure.
Yeah, all 4 of us did. Yeah. My sister was about 5 or 6. So my mother was carrying me in diapers. It's always the joke around the school because we're still a huge part of that McLaughlin school. It had just opened, and my mother was an amazing, listen, you come from Irish women. My mother died in 2008, but she was just an amazing person, and one of these who could just do everything, right? The oldest of the 8, the only one who finished her leaving cert, the only one who left. Like, she just had a drive and something really, an inner drive and an ability to do things. So the thought of my mother didn't drive at that point in her life. The thought of toting 4 kids up to wherever to go to Irish dancing was nothing to her. Like, she just was like, all right, off we go. So she walked in the door, yes, with the 4 of us. And so I kind of started probably around age 3 or 4, just because I was imitating what the others were doing. And we stayed, my brothers lasted till maybe, I don't know, 4th or 5th grade. And then they kind of faded out as other activities took over. But my sister and I stayed. And then I competed all the way through college and after, and performed, and eventually got my license to teach it. I kind of took to it the most, but even one of my brothers came back and danced as an adult, joined an adult class, had missed it. So it's just been, it's been a big backdrop for us for our whole lives. Irish dancing, Christy would laugh when, you know, I worked at the Daily News. That's how we, whatever, years ago, one of the early spots and it stops in my career. And we had a boss, Sean Brennan, who worked there then. And he used to call me 6 degrees of Irish dancing, because no matter, it seemed who I spoke to, you know, you'd find somebody in common. If it wasn't sports, it was Irish dancing. It's just a huge part of makes me what I am.
You see, for you, it's a huge part. I you know, if I had grown up here, I think I would probably still be going to counseling, because I was forced to go, and I have just scary memories of, it was Mrs. Coffee, and she was the scariest woman I've ever met. And the only thing I can remember was we started off with something called hop over to behind.
Yeah.
I just, to this day, I've had nightmares where
PTSD. Hop over
like,
to behind. Yes, we have. You didn't do your jump up, hop back 2, 3, 4 or something.
I didn't quite get that far.
I'm sorry to hear it, because yeah, for us it's been, gosh, it's booked my ticket to travel all over the world. And Patsy, who you mentioned, is a central figure in my life. And you know, I teach now as part of the fact my daughter is a highly successful competitor herself, and I get to teach her. And I try not to be that nasty, scary teacher type that you talk about. We're in a very, I actually think, I mean, we can make jokes, but at the McLaughlin School, like, we are very, very intent upon sort of finding the right match of teaching to the students. Some kids are really intensely competitive and want the highest level teaching, and we do our best to meet their needs, but some just want to know culturally how to dance, or want to be able to on St. Patrick's Day go into their classroom, right, and do jump up, hop back 2, 3, 4. If that's what they want out of it, then we work to, you know, that's what they get out of it. So I think that's the beauty of Irish dance, is that it can apply to any level. So if you'd had us as teachers, or if you had Patsy, I promise you would have had a much better experience.
Yeah, I don't see me. I know there's a strong Irish dancing community down here in Dunedin.
Yeah.
I haven't really been looking into it just yet. I'm more trying to find a yoga.
Great exercise. There's no better aerobic class in the world than an hour or 2 class of Irish dancing. I'll tell you that much.
Okay, well, we'll do that the next time we get together. So here's the question: April 30th, 1994 was the only time I ever regretted not shortly afterwards was the only time I ever regretted not keeping up the Irish dancing. River dance.
Yeah.
Can you remember the first time you saw it?
100%. I was actually at a teachers meeting, and they had gotten an Irish dance teachers meeting, and they had gotten the video, and they put it in the conference room that we were at in the Marriott in Westchester, and that was the first time that I saw it, and I was just, yeah, blown away like the rest of the world. I was lucky enough to have been involved for years prior to that. That there was a pretty regular St. Patrick's Day concert at Radio City with
Frank Patterson.
Yes, and so he would contract out, and it was a cool thing where Irish dancers from all different schools throughout the New York and New Jersey area would combine together to make a show that would sort of support the concert, and it would be different snippets where the dancers would be dancing. It occurred mostly through while I was in college, and because I was working at the college newspaper, I wasn't always available to do it, but the year after I graduated, I was, so I got to perform in Radio City as part of, and it had a little bit of that notion, right, like the long kind of chorus line of dancers, but that being said, it didn't have a patch on what from Michael Flatley and Jean Butler, who Jean Butler was the original woman in that Riverdance performance, was somebody I grew up knowing through competition through all the years. She went to a dance school in Queens and when I was in New Jersey, and to see what they had sort of turned it into blew me away. And now to see the enduring impact of that and it becoming such a widely respected art form in its own right, you know, in among all these other different kind of cultural forms of dancing. I think it's fabulous. I mean, we've gone to, my daughter and I saw Riverdance at the Gaiety Theater, you know, on one of our trips over, and we
used to work at the Gaiety Theater.
Did you really? Oh, we loved, yeah, we went to see it there. And We've seen Lord of the Dance, you know, at Radio City in New York or whatever, at the theater it was in New York, whatever's going, will. In fact, one of the years I went to see Riverdance, a friend of my brother's was in the show, and we went to see it in New York when it had its regular run. And it's just funny that this is a circle for us. Met Frank McCourt in the lobby. He was there attending that night as well. And I had a chance to say hello and tell him my mother was from Limerick, and we had a nice little chat. But I love what it's done to put Irish dancing on a stage that otherwise, you know, that people, because when I was a kid growing up and we would, you know, assembly mornings on St. Patrick's Day, or even if there was a talent show or something, like the four Sullivan kids, we would show up, you know, and do our little forehand reel or each do a step or whatever. And we were sort of this strange anomaly. You know, the other kids would look at us like, what are you doing? Like, what is that? We don't know what that is. And I think what Riverdance did, if nothing else, was change that conversation. Like, people recognize it now as, oh my gosh, that's that cool Irish dancing thing, you know, that's cool. And it's pretty amazing. So that part I'll forever be in its debt. Now, it had an influence on the sport itself. Like, when I grew up doing it, there was a competitive side, but there was a very heavy or just as equal cultural side. I think it has changed, and it became, you know, nowadays much more of kind of a 24/7 sport, not unlike travel soccer or whatever it might be. You know, there are kids who devote themselves just to Irish dancing.
It's gotten expensive with the costumes and well,
exactly.
I'd love to know who decided on the hair pieces. So that's the part that's just like.
Well, I know I hated sleeping in rollers. For whatever reason, you wanted that curly look and the bouncing hair when you were dancing, and you wanted it to kind of look a certain way. And I surely hated sleeping in rags and rollers. So maybe the wig is better for that. But I can tell you, my daughter doesn't love wearing the wig, and it can get awfully heavy at times. But
and the costumes are expensive, right?
Yeah, absurdly so. Oh yeah.
So just two things about that. One is kind of an inside note about the Frank Patterson's Radio City show. Was Frank's contract with Radio City was that he got paid so much per seat. What he had the smart idea doing was, his whole reason for having all of the Irish dancing troops and all of the rest of it was because if little Tara Sullivan is playing at Radio City, well, mommy and daddy and auntie and uncle and granny, everybody's going to want to go. So that was the thing. It was kind of like, you know, so I mean, there's 25 people in your troop.
Yep.
If every one of them brings 6 people, there's 150 tickets sold, and that's what Frank was making a fortune. But the better part of it is, do you know why Riverdance came about?
Well, it was the Eurovision, right? To have the.
Well, what happened was Ireland won the Eurovision, which is not really what you want to win, because there's no money, and in fact, it costs money to put it on.
Right.
So what happened was Ireland won it back-to-back years. So they won it the first year, and the EU gave them a grant, something about, I want to say like €500,000 or £500,000, whatever it was back then. And the first year they won it, they did a video for the Hot House Flowers song "Don't Go," where they went all over Ireland and all over Europe and spent $500,000 doing this.
Right.
So they win it the following year, and they have no money. So they had to come up with something. It had to be with ad breaks. It had to be 12 minutes long to allow for the different jurors in the different countries to explain to people that aren't familiar. The Eurovision is something that us Irish people are scarred by, but it happens every year, and there's songs. I mean, ABBA won it one year, but there's songs of, I don't know, that's probably, the Waterloo is probably the most famous song people know. I know the Irish songs and stuff like that, and Colin Wilkinson was in it one year, and Johnny Logan won it twice, and but they would have this, and they would have the 12 minutes, and that's where they come up with Riverdance. So I mean, it was ingenious.
Yeah. So they kept it like they saved money by doing something that was just.
They had no money, so they had to come up with something that wasn't going to cost them
labor and Yeah.
I also had the misfortune. I never got to meet Gene Butler, but I worked in a very famous nightclub in Dublin in the late 90s, and Michael Flatley would come in, and he was not a nice guy.
Yeah,
let's just put it that way.
He's enough ahead of me, and was a Chicago-based dancer, so I didn't cross paths as much with him.
Let's just put it this way: the thing Michael Flatley loves more than anything in the world is Michael Flatley, and he does not quick about any of that. So I'm glad we got to. So Before we're going to wrap up shortly, we have gone on a little bit over time here. I know John has things he has to do.
Sorry, John. We're having fun.
So here's my question. Is Kevin an Irish dancer?
Kevin did not take to Irish dancing. We tried a little bit, but it was all sports and all. And it's funny, I think I was just young and overwhelmed with being a parent for the first time. I didn't push it as much. And I don't know if it was a boy girl thing, but my brothers did it. So, but no, Kevin ended up being a Division I javelin thrower and won a state chase. So he was a sports kid all the way through. And that's where all his time went. Track and field, soccer, you name it, baseball, all the usuals.
And what about hubby?
Hubby, no, he's a good dancer to a rock and roll song, but no, he has a German background. My married name is Reinheimer. From when I dated him, he certainly knows more about Irish dancing, and he's a great fesh dad, as we call them, a fesh dad. Fesh is our feshana, whatever is the competition for Irish dancing. He does a great job with our daughter Kira when she has a competition, but could not do a jump out hop actor 3-4. No.
I was just curious if it's because, I mean, if I saw you posted, you mentioned about Kevin getting married, and you mentioned about, you posted on Facebook a couple of forehand reels and stuff like that. Yes. And I was curious. I'm like, I wonder if it's the German guy.
That was actually myself, my two brothers, and normally my sister, because the four of us make a perfect forehand reel. Unfortunately, my sister living in Ireland was unable to, during the pandemic, to attend the wedding. I had little fat heads made with her, with all my relatives that couldn't come over, and we had them join the party that way. But so my daughter filled in my sister's part. Yes. And
so your sister lives in Tullamore?
She does, yeah.
Which is in County Offaly. I'm glad you told me that. I never would have known that Tullamore was in Offaly.
You might not have. You would have known, but many other people wouldn't have known. Yes. So yes, she lives. She met and married an Irishman while they lived in New York, and he's from Tullamore. And they moved back. They've been there 25 years now or whatever. Wow. In 25 years. Yes. So. Yeah,
my kids are back there. I haven't seen my son in almost 2 years, and my daughter in a year and a half. So I'm kind of fingers crossed, hoping that. So because as it stands right now, they can't come. My kids could come here because they have their citizenship, but their partners couldn't.
I know.
And I just realized that I don't have I don't have an Irish passport at the minute because it expired, and I can't go on the American one.
Right. We're all caught in between, aren't we? My sister hasn't been over. We were thinking about hopefully by Christmas, maybe. What do you think? I don't know.
Well, I was talking to my daughter yesterday, and like I said, we don't like to talk about politics or religion on the crack and the bat. But my daughter's telling me yesterday that Ireland right now have 1,000 cases a day, but they're expecting by the end of August to have 4,000 cases a day.
Oh Lord!
And the problem in Ireland is they don't have this. They don't like that. The problem is the nurses get sick. They don't have any of the nurses or doctors to come in and help them, stuff like that. They opened indoor dining in Ireland this week. That's a year and a half without it been open, So, but anyway, we digress.
We'll all wait it out. Yep.
So listen, Tara, we've had an absolute blast here, but I got to ask you, we have to bring you back because we're up against the time wise. We have so much stuff that we haven't talked about your illustrious
we get to
career.
Do part two?
I wanted to get your take on Ted Lasso and
love Ted Lasso.
I did too. It's like when I introduced Christy to the Derry Girls.
Oh my goodness, the greatest. Even I need subtitles on the Derry Girls.
Well, that's the thing. We needed the first couple episodes. We needed subtitles, and I also had to stop and explain the humor as well as what they were saying. So
good. We have so much still to cover. I visited Belfast and Derry not long ago. I have kind of a surrogate son who lives in Belfast because we did Project Children. Right. And hosted it. Yeah. So much more to cover. We got
so much to talk. And also I was a huge fan, still I'm a huge fan, and my son is a huge fan of Christy Moore. Can't get Christy, she just refuses to have anything to do with a guy who has a song about a shovel. So this is Tara, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you for being part of this. And you're now a member of the Irish American Baseball Society. So we have so much more to talk about. We're not going to talk about baseball and the trade deadline, and I'm not going to ask you about it because if you think what Boone's doing and all the rest of it. But we'd love to have you back maybe later on in the year.
We'll book it now
we're in our infancy in this stage, you know, and we're trying to.
A part two as baseball season even gets closer to the playoffs, whenever. But yes, anytime. This was great.
Awesome. Listen, Tara, thanks a million for doing this. This has been Cracking the Bat with Tara Sullivan from the Boston Globe. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.